WiSP Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
Hi, and thanks for downloading this podcast, which is the first of our WiSP Mashups. For those of you who are new to WiSP and may have missed some of our very earliest shows a few years ago, we thought we would assemble a little compilation. And with the Soccer World Cup still fresh in our minds, of course, we take a look back at some of the conversations 4 years ago ahead of the 2015 World Cup. We begin with former English professional soccer player Rachel Brown-Finnis, who announced her retirement in the winter of 2015 as women's teams were turning professional, and she reflected on her career and how the sport for women has changed. I began by asking her how it was for her when she started playing.
I mean, I started playing when I was about 8 years old and joined a boys' team at my primary school. There were no girls' teams in the area, so I joined a boys' team, joined a boys' Sunday league team, then went to secondary school and was not allowed to play for the boys' team, and there were still no girls' teams around. So I joined a women's team age 12 and played for a women's team from that age forwards. Where women's football is now in England is unbelievable, and I'm very sort of proud really to, I guess, have been part of the journey in how women's football and women's sport, as you mentioned, has really kind of evolved over the sort of 20 years that I've been involved. To have left women's football now in England, where this coming season the majority of the top teams are fully professional, is truly, astounding. And a real sort of testament to the hard work that the FA's put in, as well as the group of girls, including myself, who've been involved in how it has, how it really has been transformed. But I think the platform of the Olympics in London 2012 was fantastic for women's sport, for minority sports, and really kind of brought out a real number of role models for young girls and young boys to have across a range of different sports. So I think the Olympics was fantastic, not just for women's football, but for women's sport in general.
Yeah, and as you say, particularly soccer's come a long, long way since you began your career. But you were faced then with sexism, and the prejudices. As a young girl, Rachel, do you remember how this impacted you and your morale and your confidence?
I think, if anything, it made me more determined, because I at that age, at 8, 9, 10, I didn't see, just the fact that I was a girl, I didn't see that as a good enough reason for me to not be allowed to play football. And, I've continued to sort of play in the school playground, and eventually my parents are very liberal, and they basically asked again my PE teacher at primary school to let me kind of try out, I guess, on the boys, on the school football team. So it was their kind of initial persistence and my initial persistence that got me that first chance. But, I've never, if anything, anyone's attitude has always made me more determined. I'm a very determined and sort of dogged person at times when I have to be. And I don't really see barriers. I just see things as potential challenges and looking for solutions. I think that attitude from a young age has really been the thing that has kind of allowed me to continue, I guess, the upwards journey that I had, and allowed me to get over any initial sort of problems or hurdles, and to continue and really, I guess, live the dream and play at the top level.
Did you have any family involvement in the sport? Did your dad play?
No, neither of my parents were interested in football at all. I do have an older brother who didn't play football. I have a younger brother who played a little bit of football. But yeah, I was the first one in the family to really take an interest in football. I remember my local team, where I grew up, a town called Burnley. We're at Wembley Stadium, the big iconic stadium, and they'd got to a cup final, and the whole town of Burnley pretty much went down to London, sort of 5 hours on the train, and 60,000 Burnley fans went down. I was only 7 or 8 years old, and my family decided to take us just because the whole town was going. and we all went down together, and that was the first ever game I went to, and the first time when I thought, wow, this is an amazing atmosphere. I love the environment, and whether it's, I had no inkling that I would actually start playing at that point. I just knew that I'd kind of got hooked on football at that point. So no, it wasn't any sort of family involvement or any sort of, my mum and dad are both quite sporty, swimmers and runners more than anything. And I did a whole range of sports growing up. I was encouraged to try anything and everything, from windsurfing to hockey, to badminton, to squash. Every single sport you can think of, I've probably tried. So sporty family, but not football specifically, no.
So how old were you then, Rachel, when you had that sort of light bulb moment, thought, hey, I'm quite good at this, I could make a career out of it?
It genuinely wasn't until I was about 14. I just really enjoyed playing. And I knew when I was at secondary school, I was better than the other girls at school at football. But then that wasn't much of a comparison because it wasn't, a competitive team. It was just more of a sort of social team at the school. And there were no centres of excellence. There was no kind of elite pyramid structure across the FA at that time. Another sign of progress that the FA has made is it has centres of excellence across the country. It has youth international teams from under 15s upwards. But there wasn't that at the time, so I didn't really have anything to compare myself to, and I didn't even know there was an England team. I didn't know that women played football seriously. I just played for, when I was 12, I went to play for a team called Accrington Stanley, which, were really kind of low down, and just really I enjoyed diving around in the mud, I guess, as a goalkeeper. So it wasn't until I was 14 and I went to a goalkeeper camp down in London. It just sounded like a fun thing to go on and to be taught how to be a goalkeeper for a week over Easter. And I begged and pleaded with mum and dad, and they let me go. And, the people at the camp, I was the only girl out of 95 people on the camp. And the people there said, you know what, you're kind of actually quite good, and we suggest that you try out at a higher ranked team. And the coach who I met there, a guy called Mick Payne, he actually got in contact with Liverpool ladies, and they asked me for a trial. And so when I was 14, I went over in the off-season to trial for Liverpool. And really, I guess everything in the system, so from an FA point of view and playing for a top team, went from there. So it was only 14, 15 when I realised that I was any good at it. And as far as making a career out of it, it's more of a lifestyle choice because we've not really earned any money from it until maybe the last 5, 6, 7 years. So career-wise, yes, in that I've dedicated my whole life to it. But it certainly hasn't. I've never been inspired by money. I never played for sort of financial reasons. And another sort of real sign of how things have changed is that girls can make an actual career out of football now. They can set out at 7, 8 years old and think, I want to be a professional footballer. And for me, that's kind of a dream come true, really, for where girls' football was and women's football was to where it is now.
This episode was first aired on January the 7th, 2015. And one of the first WiSP shows that became WiSP World and was taken literally around the world, we had a series of WiSP World shows, which you can find on the website at wisports.com, with a variety of co-hosts. It was a news magazine show, and on this episode I was joined by Joe Gunston from Sports Liberated in the UK, and we reviewed the very latest news which had just happened to kick off with soccer as we were heading towards the World Cup in 2015. And this episode was originally aired on January the 15th, 2015. I think we have to inevitably start, Joe, with that great story of Stephanie Roche.
Oh, yeah. What I find fantastic about that is the fact that for people that don't know about Stephanie Roche, she was up for the FIFA Goal of the Year from the whole of last year, and she was up against the world's best players like Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, and she went to the FIFA Awards, and this vote for the best goal of last year was voted for by the public and by the media, and she came second and actually she got 33% of the votes, which is just awesome. And if you watch the goal, I mean, I swear I'm not being biased here, but I think it was the best goal. It was unbelievable. I mean, what did you think? Did you think it was the best one?
I have to say, I think it was, simply because she volleyed it, from one foot to the other, round that attacking player, and then, unsighted to the goal, she scores that goal from, literally on the turn. And I think because she wasn't sighted to the goal, it makes it that much better than the other contenders.
Yeah, we're not biased at all, are we?
No, not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. But I think the spin-off from that, Joe, was notably the incredible media exposure, and social media chatter was enormous. And of course, this all bodes well for women's soccer. So I'm sure, even though she didn't win it, women's soccer generally has to be pretty darn pleased with the momentum that it picked up during that period.
Absolutely, especially with the World Cup coming up in June of this year, June till 5th of July. And it's just going to be, I really think this is going to be a real turning point for not just for women's football. So we're going to have to decide whether we're calling it football or soccer with you being in the States, aren't we? But I'm sticking with football for the time being. But yeah, we've got the World Cup coming up. And I don't know if you heard, but actually for the last England women's game, we played Germany, and it was at Wembley Stadium, which is just the home of English football, and women have never been allowed to sort of play there before. And actually, we got more spectators watching that game than an England men's match about a month previously. I think there was like 50,000 people who went to watch this match, and I think the 50,000 people that went to this match, the goal of the year featuring, a woman for the first time in that selection, and the Women's World Cup coming up, I think it's just going to really be a huge turning point, particularly if our own particular teams do well in the competition. That's what I'm hoping for.
And finally, another professional player shares her thoughts on the growth of women's soccer and how she wants to become a role model for girls. Former Seattle Reign midfielder Keelin Winter began by talking about how to encourage girls to take up the sport, and she also shares her experiences of playing for the Australian club, the Western Sydney Wanderers. This episode was first aired on February the 10th, 2015. I began by asking Keelin if she felt that women's soccer had the exposure that it deserves to encourage players to come into the game.
I think that as a defensive midfielder, that position is not a very flashy position. I'm not the one typically that's going forward and scoring amazing goals, or I'm not normally the one like Kim Little who's creating all of the opportunities. But I kind of relish my position in that I like to do the grunt work, and it sometimes can feel a little bit like dirty work. I have to be disciplined. I have to sit and hold and maintain the possession of the ball for my team. Kind of do the things that go unnoticed by a lot of fans. Do I think I've gone unrecognized or unnoticed? I think maybe, but I think that Laura has noticed me, and that's the reason I'm on the Seattle Reign. And I think that Laura hit the nail on the head when she said that it's a huge honor to play for the Reign, because it is. We are in the top 10% of players in the world, and I think that Laura is arguably the best coach in the world, and I think that as a club, I think we're making a name for ourselves as a club to be feared and a club to be reckoned with. So that's been huge.
Well, I understand that you were loaned to the Western Sydney Wanderers. Tell us about that. That happened last year, did it? How long have you been back?
I got back the middle of December, and I actually played a little bit of a different role with the Wanderers. I was more of an attacking midfielder rather than a defensive midfielder, because that's what my coach with the Wanderers thought was needed with the team. And so that was fun for me because I got to get forward and create a bit more and score a few goals here and there. So I think overall we weren't the best team in the league. We were dead last at the end of the season, but I think it was a really valuable experience for me because I got to figure out when to go forward, how to go forward. I think that my vision, I think, has gotten better in that I look forward a little bit more. I think my passes have become a little bit more dangerous rather than just possession-oriented. But that was a ton of fun over there.
Well, obviously you've brought a lot of experience that you can bring back to Seattle and for the start of the season, which doesn't happen till April, though. So what are you going to be doing between now and then?
Yeah, I'm back in Seattle, and I'm living here and working here. But besides the work, there's quite a few of us. There's 6 or 7 pro players who live in Seattle, and so we get together a couple times a week, and we go out and run. We do fitness. We do technical work. We play. So, you know, we're not by ourselves by any means. So it's not just Reign players either. It's professional players who make Seattle their home in the off season. So we play with boys teams, so we stay busy. And like Laura said, I think the standards of the league dictate that you have to be working on your game in the off season. You can't, you know, take the 6 months and sit on your butt and do nothing. So it's been really nice to have the other professional players here in Seattle to play with and work with and get fit with.
And in the course of your career, you would have seen the sport evolve, especially here. But talk a little bit about those opportunities that there are for players, and what do you think the challenges are, Keelin, for young girls coming into the sport and aspiring to be the defensive mid player that you are?
Yeah, so I mean, for the rookie players who will be coming in to this season, I think there's quite a few challenges, especially coming from the college level to the professional level. I think the speed of play is a huge challenge, but it's something that over time I think the best players adapt to the higher speed of play and more athleticism overall among the players. And then not only that, but typically when you enter the professional world, the style of play changes, and hopefully it's a little bit better and a little bit higher than it was at the college level. So there's a lot of things to adapt to, but I think that the younger players, they put in the work and are open to criticism and praise, and then I think learning from the older players is a huge bit that helped me a lot in my rookie season, especially, well, I guess in my first 2 years as a professional was trying to look towards the older players and figure out what it is that they do really well that I kind of wanted to emulate. So that was a big thing for me.
So looking ahead to the season then and the rest of the year, Keelin, what will be the highlights for you? What are the big games you're looking forward to?
Always Portland. We kind of have a derby, the Portland-Seattle derby. So always looking forward to those games. And aside from that, I think our games against Kansas City last year proved to be very challenging. And obviously they won the final game, the championship game, and I don't think anybody is going to be quick to forget that game. So I would say the Portland Derby game and playing Kansas City again, those are the games that I'm looking forward to.
Well, looking way down the track with your crystal ball, Keelin, when your life as a player comes to an end, your career comes to an end there, what do you expect you want to be doing afterwards to give back to the sport?
I do a little bit of coaching right now, but obviously my coaching revolves around my playing career. So I imagine that I'll continue my coaching. And as far as giving back to the sport, I think that there's really no better way to do it than to be a role model for the younger girls. And I think that I'll just continue training the youth players, and I think that a big thing for the youth players is telling them that as a professional player that they can get there and to be the best that they can be, and I think that's a huge way to give back.
Conversations from the world of women's sports. This is WiSP Sports Radio.
We hope you've enjoyed this mashup of past episodes, and of course you can find all of our shows online at wisports.com, and of course wherever you listen to podcasts. And if there's anyone you think we should be having on one of our shows, whatever their sport and wherever they are in the world, you can let us know by dropping us an email to info@wisports.com. And don't forget to follow and share on social media at WISP Sports. That's it for now. Thanks for listening and turning up the volume on women's sport.